Good morning. My name is Tony. For those of you, these are the necessary things to get out of the way, because here we are meeting for the first time. Hello to our friends out there in Zoom world. My name is Tony. That's the name my mother gave me. For those of you who are of a tradition that you need to put something in front of that, like a father or something like that, you do what's comfortable for you. But I go by Tony. Most people call me Tony. It's the name my mother gave me. When I was serving as a dean of the cathedral, all haughty and all that stuff, I asked them to please call me Tony. Those who had to call me Dean Pompa, which I think is confusing because it's like, are you Dean Pompa, like Dean Martin? It's like, no, I can't sing like Dean Martin. And that's a generational thing because there's probably some people sitting here who don't know who Dean Martin is. It's all very confusing, kind of like our parable today. Just a little confusing, isn't it? I think it is too. And I've preached it a couple times in my life. So here's what I'd like to talk with you about today. I'd like to talk to you about what it was like to grow up in the coal regions of Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up, in Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, if anyone's ever been there or heard of the place. When I grew up there, well, right now it's a really touristy little place. It's very cute, touristy, what's left over of all of the Industrial Revolution folk who made their money. Their old homes are there. The architecture is exquisite. It's lovely. There's lots of natural resource around because it's recovered from being stripped of all of its goodness for years, the coal that was taken out of there. But when I grew up there in the late 60s, 70s, my God, how did I get so old? It was the economic bust. There wasn't anything going on there, I'm here to tell you. Carbon County, Pennsylvania, at that moment in time, was the poorest county in the state of Pennsylvania, after being one of the wealthiest at one point. What do you do when you grow up in the coal regions and there's absolutely nothing to do? Well, let me tell you what you do. You get with your friends on summer days and you go to Sam Miller's baseball field, named after Sam Miller. I have no idea who he was, but there you go. You go to the baseball field with your friends, and if you don't have enough players to field a team of 9 on each side, which was true for us, you make up the game. So here's how we made up the game. We cut the field in half. I was one of the youngest in the neighborhood, so I had absolutely no input into these rules. I just want to tell you. The older guys made up these rules. They cut the field in half, and then you would position your players on one side of the field, and you could position them anywhere that you wanted. But if you hit the ball to anywhere other than where the fielders were, you were out. Anybody who knows anything about baseball knows that that's stupid. It's hard enough to hit that ball. It is hard enough. It's like the hardest thing in the world to hit a baseball. It actually is. The other thing is, we're in the rules of the regular game, right? If you hit a home run in baseball, you are a hero, right? If you hit a home run in the games the way that we played it was 3 outs. Do you know why? Right, because you lost the ball. And the ball cost money. And we didn't have any. So if you hit the home run, you lost the ball, and it would be an hour over the bank looking for the ball that if you were lucky enough to find, then an hour later, you'd go back and play more of the stupid game with the stupid rules that rewarded those who were older, larger, bigger, who could hit the ball in different places. Young guys like me who were stupid and just happy to make any contact with the ball, made out all the time because I hit the ball in the places where you weren't supposed to. I wasn't big enough or strong enough ever to hit a home run. Actually, ever. But we all entered an agreement almost every day of our lives in the summer to play the game that way. And some were more advantaged than others, but we all agreed to play the game that way. I think maybe that's a little bit about what's going on in our parable today. What is historically called the parable of the dishonest manager. I would like to suggest that maybe we look at that a little different and give it a different title. And if you give me a little leeway on my first Sunday with you, you'll allow me to do that. I think this is the parable of the dude who's in a pickle. Our job is to figure out why Jesus is inviting us into this parable. Because Jesus is talking to who? It's the way we started, his disciples. This is a story for anyone who wants to follow Jesus. Therefore, this is a story for you and for me. Because I'm guessing, as beautiful as a day as it is in Erie, that you have come here because you want to be a disciple of Jesus. So this parable of the dude who's in a pickle, here's the deal. The dude is a manager in a game that in Jesus' time, the oppressor, that is the Romans, in their occupation of Jesus' land, have made with those who live there. And that system, that game, is to the great advantage of some and to the great disadvantage of others. Does that make sense? I know that you have no idea or any inclination that that might still be true in places. Here's the deal. This manager, probably of Jewish descent. We don't know that for sure because Jesus doesn't say, but scholars think probably of Jewish descent, is in a pickle because he's already participating in a system that his scriptures tell him he may not. You may not charge interest on any deal that is going to oppress the poor. That's not rocket science. I don't know why we still make that so hard, but that's not rocket science because we still make that hard. So he's already in a pickle because he just has to make a living and he's surviving. And so he's managing on behalf of this person who owns everything. And he's brokering daily deals with people where that manager is making more than he should. The owner is making more than he should. And that manager himself probably is making a little for himself. And I don't know if you've ever been fired or lost your job or been squeezed out of anything because of economics, but he's about to get fired. He's about to get fired. I had a paper route when I was a kid. My brother shared it with me. He was older. He paid me like a quarter of the whole pay to do half the route. I just trot that one out every now and then because it makes me feel better. And hope he's not watching. Might be, so I score more points with her, right? The second job I had was pumping gas at a gas station. And somehow I wasn't very good at that, and I got fired. It's the only job I've ever been fired from. That's not a good feeling, right? This dude's getting fired. He's in a pickle. This is not going well. He's got to decide, as he participates in the system, he's got to decide what he's going to do with this. He's got a choice to make. So what does he do in this parable? He chooses the people. Now, I know because you've been raised in the same places that I've been raised that you want to make this about ethics, that you want to make this about the morality of the dishonest manager, and scholars forever have tried to help us see it that way. But I don't think that's what's going on here. I don't think that's what Jesus wants his disciples to hear. I think instead, and I'm not alone because I did a little reading, I think what's going on here is that this dude in a pickle figures out quickly where his loyalty needs to be. And his motivation may be self-preservation, but let's be honest, how much of our motivation is not self-preservation, right? All of us. Anthropology 101, right? He chooses the people. He says to himself, I got to live with my neighbor. So suddenly we're in Mr. Rogers land. I'm close to Pittsburgh. I can't help it. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Won't you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? And here it is, Jesus again saying to his disciples, man, you better figure out who your neighbor is. You better figure it out. And you better understand, disciples, the world that you are living in. That's also what Jesus is saying, I believe, in this parable. You better know that this world doesn't play fair. And it rarely plays the way that our Father in heaven has asked us to play. Does that feel right to you? This world we're living in, does that feel right to you? Disciples of Jesus? So what are you going to do about it? Jesus is saying to his disciples. How about this guy, the dude in the pickle? He is shrewd because he has come to Jesus in this moment and understood that he's got to live with his neighbors. So there's this little prayer that we say. You and I say it, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Forgive us our debts, if we choose that version. Forgive us our debts as we forgive those who are indebted to us. That is not a little line in that prayer, folks. That is not a little line. That is not a throwaway line in that prayer. If you have ever literally been oppressed by any kind of debt, whether that be emotional, whether that be physical, whether that be economic, when you get relief, man, that is freedom. That is freedom. And isn't that what God dreams for us? And isn't that what the shrewd manager has figured out? He is giving freedom to those who are indebted. How smart is he in this moment, regardless of his motivation? Regardless of his motivation. And isn't that maybe what this parable and all of the Gospel of Luke is about? It is about Jesus proclaiming that God's heart has always been and remains true in that moment when Jesus is telling that parable, and it remains true in our time today. That the kingdom of God is about proclaiming release and freedom to anything that holds us hostage. Anything. And we are asked the question then, what is it, Jesus, that we need to be free from? And what is it that we have pledged loyalty to? Even a system that's bankrupt, that might be holding others in bondage. See, it's not just our own bondage, it's our neighbor's bondage. And doesn't that make following Jesus really, really hard? Really hard. Because guess what, folks? We participate in that system. And there ain't no easy answer to how to figure out how to participate in that system, but there is the invitation, perhaps daily, to get up every day and choose the Jesus way, which means choosing your neighbor, even the neighbor you may not have known. And I don't need to go into the, I don't even understand why we make this that hard. We don't need to go into the silliness of the current example of how we miss our neighbors when we read in the paper stories. And I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, whatever, all that ridiculousness that forces us to be in opposition, right? But how is it that we put a whole bunch of folk who are really hurting on an airplane and fly them some other place? Because if they were our children, you would never do that. Would you ever put your child on an airplane and just send them away? Right? There's 1,000 different examples. It's beyond politics. It's about the Jesus way, right? It's about the Jesus way. Jesus' punchline to this parable is, disciples, be shrewd, know the world you're living in, but know where your loyalties are. Know to whose wagon you are attaching yourself and how you want to live and who it affects and who it holds bondage and who it sets free. Because I promise you, if we're participating in something that holds someone else bondage, we are ourselves in bondage. And Jesus says clearly, you can't serve God and you can't serve that other ridiculous stuff. You're either going to love one or hate the other, right? So we're going to hate the other stuff. See, Jesus lets us use the word hate. We're going to hate that other stuff, and we're going to love the God way, the Jesus way, the way that sets us free, the way that sets others free, because that's what God yearns the most for, is to set us free. That's your song of praise. Your song of praise is all about being set free. I'm assuming you sing that a lot. There you go, keep singing it. Don't you want to be free? Don't you want others to feel the same way you do, loved and free in the love of God? Don't you want that for everybody, right? And so when you see that that's not true, doesn't that make you hate it? Something for us to think about. I'm going to leave you with these words. This is Nina Simone. I love Nina Simone. I discovered Nina Simone. She was dead when I discovered her. But I discovered Nina Simone in a blues club in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on a date night with my wife, when it was all night Nina Simone. Learn more about Nina Simone and her complicated life, but her dedication to freedom. I leave you with these words. I think these are God's words coming from Nina Simone's lips. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains that are holding on to me. I wish I could say them loud, say them clear for all the world to hear. I wish I could share all the hope that is in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you'd see, and then you would agree that everyone should be free. Amen.